Is there anything you would want to tell somebody who's the rich or the wealthy that can kind of not push them over to actually donate or be that philanthropist that they might be thinking about but be on the edge of doing?
You don't have to be rich to give. We all have a purpose in this life in terms of how we engage with one another and how we see the challenges that comes along with being on this earth that we live in. We all have a responsibility to contribute positively in the environment and the community that we're in. I would say regardless if you have 50 cents in your bank account to $35 billion like Mackenzie Scott, it is our responsibility to give back. So if you have more than others, it's really important to be able to figure out, are there ways for you to partake the wealth that you have or the resources that you have in a way that it's impacting others positively.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Community Transformation Podcast, where we speak about issues on grant making, community success, and other community challenges. Today, we'll be speaking about unpacking philanthropy, as well as maximizing impact and inclusivity in wealth distribution. So today we're going to be speaking about Mackenzie Scott and her notoriety that recently appeared on her distribution of her wealth. A little backstory. So Mackenzie Scott is the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos. He is the third or fourth richest person in the world globally. So once her divorce from her husband happened, she decided that she's going to be placing a lot of the money that she had gotten from the divorce into different nonprofits and charitable foundations around the world, as well as one organization in New Hampshire. We see that through her distribution of funds, there's a lot of other wealthy people that kind of pushed back. They stated that it wasn't correct that what she was doing. For example, Elon Musk, who is the founder of Tesla, as well as SpaceX, vocalized his criticism about her. So, welcome, Deo. Tell me about what you know about it and what do you think of the topic?
Hello, Millie. I'm excited to be in this podcast with you. It's a very hot topic, especially in the philanthropy space, the nonprofit space, where you have a billionaire literally giving out a whole lot of money out to different organizations. And she's gotten a lot of pushbacks from some folks, and some folks are just so excited that there's somebody out there who is living out what they're saying that they're going to do with their wealth. So it's interesting. I think it's really interesting because that money has gone on to really help a lot of different organizations. And I also think it's really cool that she's doing it in a way that it's considering all type of nonprofits, not just reputable one, but also smaller ones that might not have, national visibility. So the team that she's put together must be doing a great job of identifying who's out there doing important work. Just like you mentioned in your intro, one organization here in New Hampshire received some money that came directly from Mackenzie Scott to help them in the work that they've been doing in New Hampshire for a very long time. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing when rich people give out some of their wealth to causes that are important.
What do you think of the specific organization that she's choosing?
Just for an example, so I don't really know all the other ones personally, because obviously it's nationally, and I read about it a lot when I see, this organization got money, that organization. I think from what I've read, there's a team that she's put together that's really evaluating all the different organizations that are out there and the important work that they're doing. The one that in New Hampshire that actually received some funds, I was actually a board member for that particular organization, and I'm no longer a board member. And in the time that I was transitioning off is when we were told that they got selected to be able to receive some funds. So, and I believe in that organization very much so. The fact that they were outreached for the funds, it's like incredible. It's awesome. And they've been able to do some really awesome work with that money because it was unrestricted. So I really commend the team that she's put together and her commitment to continue to be very considerable of all the different organizations out there and being able to deploy that money out.
What would be kind of your thoughts on wealthy individuals doing this type of work, and especially maybe they've done specific social matters or just regular different organizations.
I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I think it's really encouraging to see people that have wealth make a commitment with their money to make an impact. Yes, we're not all fortunate to be able to amass a lot of wealth, but it's important for those who are, the top tiers of our society to be practical and tangible around how their resources can go and make an impact. Because we all see all the other stuff that they do with their money, right? If someone build a 150 feet yacht, or lavish bunkers that they might build in Hawaii in order to escape doom days. But that's a different conversation. So we see a lot of that stuff, and I think those stuff pick up a lot of press, but I think it's really important when they've made a commitment to also make an impact, because there's finite of resources in terms of wealth in the world that we live in, and there's a whole lot of problems and gaps that people are facing here in the U.S. and all over the world. For those who have the means to be able to make a commitment to donate their money and their money to make an impact, it's an important thing, and I hope that more and more rich folks are able to do that.
So why do you think people like Elon Musk are saying, no, I don't want that? That's not a good thing to do.
Yeah, I think there's a precedent in terms of the approach that folks have to take. A lot of times, either it's discreet or there's a way that they do it where the allocation may be after a rich person dies. The money goes in the trust, and that trust goes to some organizations that are giving out money. I believe the approach that Mackenzie is taking is agitating those who have resources, because it's not the way that they're going about allocating their money. Because she's really out there, like, giving out. I think last year she gave out like over $600 million. Like, that's incredible. Just outright, like $600 million. Yeah. So I could see that agitating wealthy people like Elon and others, because it's like, this lady is really out there giving out her money. I don't know exactly the internal driver that's influencing Elon to be so vocal about being anti Mackenzie in the approach that she's taking to give out her money, but I could also see that it might also cause pressure,
like for them to feel like they have to do the same way.
Yeah, you're Elon goes between the richest man on earth, or the second or the third, right? To see this lady who's amassed $34 billion just giving out money like that might cause a ripple effect of other people calling out other billionaires in terms of, what are you doing, right? Look at what Mackenzie has done with her money, right? So I feel like maybe that pressure creates that negative vibe. And then in the recent article that they wrote about Elon's pushback, he also talks about the method in which she's going about to do it, almost like challenges, like, are you doing it the right way? Are those the right organization? And I think Elon's been very vocal about him being very anti-DEI. So I feel like he also is struggling with that, because he might think that, oh, this lady's just giving all this money to some organization that might not really do the work, or they might be still too young to get that type of money. So again, I care more about the undertone, right? What's the driver that's positioning somebody around certain friction? And I think with Elon, there's a lot going on there that he's pushing back on. But yeah, to be honest with you, I don't really care what Elon think when it comes to this, because like, we need folks with money, with wealth, to be giving out resources. And I'm super grateful that Mackenzie's she's doing this. And Elon, I mean,
do you think her approach is like the best approach, or what would you say she could take another way so that pleasing of both the wealthy as well as the organizations?
I think the best approach is the approach that focuses on those who are experiencing the gap. That's the best approach. The best approach is not allowing other billionaires to dictate how they should go about distributing money, because if they have their own way, there's always other attachment to it that might not be more reflective on the true experiences of the folks that actually need the money. So I would argue that, yes, there's probably a couple of bad apples out there that have gotten the money that Mackenzie's been giving out. But I rather go with the approach that she's taking, where her team are vetting out different organizations, looking at the impact those organizations are making, inviting them into the process, asking them, like example, like the grant maker that received the fund in New Hampshire, like they literally did not seek out the money. Mackenzie's team identified that organization, and through their research, that's what led to them to say that this is the right organization for us to give money to. So based on that engagement and experience, I believe that they're taking the right approach. And I also think that they also have those open calls. Like now and then the organization says, hey, any organization that's doing this and this, we have an open call for proposal for folks to submit, right? So they have an open RFP process where people can submit applications, but then they're also doing their own due diligence, researching and figuring out what are the organizations out there making an impact. And then they're just giving them the resources. And I think the approach that they're taking is definitely the right approach.
I do agree with you, especially with them seeking out those organizations. They're the ones doing the actual research for them instead of just them getting applications. What would you say if another wealthy or rich person decides to do the same thing as Mackenzie? What should they expect when it comes to challenges in this aspect?
Yeah, I would say you need a team, right? If a wealthy person wants to do this, you definitely have to allocate resources for a team to be able to do it. And I think Mackenzie's done a great job of building an organization that's focusing on the deployment of the resources. I would also say that allowing the stories of those organizations to be the driver of the narrative that's out there around, why you're choosing them and the impact that they're making. I think that's really important because it creates a lot of humility, because sometimes rich folks, they want the accolades, they want the spotlight because they've decided to do this or to do that. And I think from a philanthropy standpoint, if you're going to do it, it's important to have humility and be humble, because you've already achieved so much. If you are amassing billions and billions of dollars, like you've already been able to achieve a lot. So allowing the stories of those who are receiving the resources and the impact that it would make, I think that's the right way to do it. But yeah, I think it's important to allocate the money around the operation of distribution of the wealth, like Mackenzie has done, than just trying to do it ad hoc. Because, yeah, giving away $600 million probably requires a whole lot of administration work and a background, having a strong backbone of deploying those resources. I also like the fact that I'm sure she's probably taken away a lot of the red tapes by her building the infrastructure herself of the distribution instead of going to another larger grant maker. I know a lot of rich folks have pledged to the Clinton Foundation, the Global Foundation. I do think that sometimes those initiatives also have their own bureaucracy that might tame or restrict how those funds ends up going out to the people that are on the ground level. So I think that if someone's going to do it diligently and they're willing to make the investment to build a strong infrastructure for how they deploy the money, I feel like diversifying the pool of those who give out money is really important. And I think the way Mackenzie has done it, it seems to be very holistic instead of allowing and organizations that have been around for a very long time to be the ones to decide how they're going to go about to distribute that money. And it's also like it's a fresh thing, you know. I think she's coming in with a very fresh approach where smaller organization in inner city have received some of her funds, and then larger organizations that are more reputable have also received the fund. And you don't see that very often.
Yeah, I mean, when you see the organization, especially New Hampshire, kind of deals with DEI, how do you see the philanthropy and DEI intersection, especially with more people, even her continuation and donation, but more people donating to it? Do you see that it will grow? Do you see that it will be there will be a lot of pushback? Well, what would your perspective on it be?
I would say the association of DEI, the term and the word itself, to grant making, I would say right now in the landscape of where the term DEI is, it's probably not the best because it just creates a whole lot of friction. If you just stay at a high level, like, oh, we have a DEI way of distributing our fund, versus going into the weeds of like, we believe our approach is effective because we consider this. Here are the moving parts that we have as part of our requirement and how we distribute our money. I think giving specific example of the approach than just the word DEI, because I feel like the word DEI has become so polarizing today that you might not get to the core of how you're doing it. You know, I think it's important to actually exemplify it, right? And I think the purpose of it is definitely important because, for instance, if there's an organization that's serving a certain population based on the gaps that population have, if you evaluate the work that they're doing and you realize the need of that community, oh, definitely, heck yeah, you want to fund them. Regardless if they are an organization that's serving underserved population, because you're afraid that if you can highlight and identify the impact that they're making and why they exist, 100%. But I'd rather you have the narrative around the impact than just some high level terminology that people might not fully get, you know? So I think the reverse to that is also during the social unrest, when DEI was more receptive nationally, there were a lot of philanthropy folks and grant makers that rode on that narrative, but never really knew what it was supposed to be, you know, because it was the hot thing. And some banks and large corporations made a commitment around their quote unquote DEI effort. But 4 years later, a lot of folks have asked, where are you in your pledge and your commitment? Some did substantial work. Those pledges never translated into actual action. So I'm just trying to make that distinction between the term and the work itself. I think the work, you can define what it looks like to operate from a DEI standpoint, right?
Can you give examples of that?
Equity, like an example that I just made earlier. Like if there's certain needs within your community, you're trying to figure out what the impact of those needs are. And when you create your strategy of how you're going to allocate your resources, because you know the different moving parts of your community, you can already account for those groups or those community members without you just falling back on the word itself, the terminology of DEI, for whatever the reason is, versus the actual work, the on-the-ground work, getting to know the people, getting to know their experiences. And a lot of grant makers, sometimes they don't really have the capacity or the relationships to get to know all the people that shaped, you know, the community that are in their, you know, in the places where they reside at. And I think that's the important part about this, that I've seen in her work, that she's really accounting for all the different community members. So it's almost like, I guess in my answer, it's almost like reverse a little bit, where yes, DEI is important, but DEI not just from the terminology. Let the DEI be from the work itself.
Okay. Are you speaking in the sense, for example, if an organization does with social justice, they focus on that narrative more than just the word DEI? Or are you saying, in a sense, not to disassociate from DEI, but not to like separate DEI and just that line? Or can you give me a little bit more context?
Yeah, I would say, I think you started kind of articulating it. If an organization, let's say an organization focuses on homeless people, okay, right? There's a lot of different things that contributes to homelessness. Socioeconomics, wage gaps, cost of housing. Sometimes there's opioid, drugs. Right? There's so many different things that contributes to it. Yeah. So if you want to be reflective to fully understand different demographic within your community that are impacted, and if you're like, identify that maybe for the longest time you served the youth, right? And you're like, that's who we just fund. But maybe there's a lot of youth program already in your community, which are important, but because you're exclusive, you might not think, hey, maybe we should also create something that focuses on homeless people, because there's a bunch of homeless services that are out there and they have limited funds. So if that's the case, if you're going to identify where the gaps are and you're trying to solve the gap, then you have to be explicit around your narrative of how you're going about accounting for everybody that's represented. I mean, that's what inclusion is, right? But you have to demonstrate what those things are from the action than just from the terminology. Because for the last 4 years, previous to now, everybody ran to the terminology because it was a hot thing. Right? Everybody had some sort of a DEI strategy, a DEI implementation, a DEI this, a DEI that, but it never really equated to action and resembling the actual community that they wanted to serve. For some. Yeah, because we've worked with partners that have been more intentional on making sure that, it's coming to fruition. But so I would just challenge that, show us the example. Mm-hmm. Give us a definition of what it means in relation to your community or the community you want to serve, than just some generic, DEI words or definition you might have that doesn't really equate to your actual action or the journey that you're on as an organization to ensure that you are accounting for everybody or specific groups that you're focusing on.
Okay. Well, thank you. Let's bring it back to Elon Musk. What would you say is like the background or maybe a bias that he might have to push him to be critical in the criticism that he's given McKinsey?
With Elon Musk, I would say there's probably a lot of different moving parts that's contributing to him having pushbacks to what McKinsey's doing with how she's deploying the resources, the money that she's acquired. I wouldn't be surprised if the method, if he wants the method to be more structured, and when I say structure, it might be more restrictive. It might feel, I think even in the different articles, he said like it feels immature to just give out all this money.
Do you think that he thinks that McKinsey is just like, oh, I left you, I'm gonna go give money everywhere?
Oh, for like the negative impact of Jeff Bezos not being with McKinsey anymore, and McKinsey using that as a way of saying, hey, I'm just gonna give all the money that I'm not sure. I think in my opinion, I think there's a bunch of different things that's causing that. I think the whole DEI thing, because he's really big anti-DEI. I think the association of some of the organization that McKinsey's giving out money to is driven by being inclusive and being equitable. I think he doesn't like that narrative. Okay. Because it seems like people are getting stuff that they don't deserve. I also think that the way that she's deploying money just tweaks him. Like it just, like the thought of $600 million just being deployed, I think it just tweaks him. Like meaning it just like, how can you? That's unresponsible. How are you just giving out You're just giving out money. You're just giving out money like that. I think that's where he feels that, like, why are you just giving out all this money? And he's also mentioned in articles that he feels like she's not really methodic in her approach of allocating the money. But the other piece too with Elon, for me, it's like, dude, you have your own way of how you're spending your money. Like, you know what I mean? Let her spend her money whichever way she wants to spend it. Like, you care more about multiplanetary exploration, so focus on that. Focus on how you're going to end up in Mars than how someone wants to allocate their money. But I do think that Elon is a very interesting, smart dude, and he's moved our society forward a lot with many different things. But I also think that his ego in the way that he sees the world, sometimes he wants to push that on everyone, and he wants to control the space and the narrative that he's in. But I do feel like he feels the pressure of a billionaire just giving out a bunch of money, like nonstop. What does it look like for other billionaire? What would the expectation be for other people would have for other billionaires in terms of how they, because it would easily be like, if someone's right, if maybe the argument over time will be, well, Elon, I'm sure he's going to be the richest man again at some point. Someone's going to say, well, how did Mackenzie has given out more money than you have, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, she's given out $2 billion or $5 billion, and how much have you given out, right? So I think that pressure too. I feel like that pressure, and maybe it's an ego thing. Maybe he's not in a position to give out money like that, or he wants to give money like that. So is Mackenzie setting precedent for what the expectation is in terms of how money gets, philanthropy money goes out?
Do you think Elon's opinion has swayed other wealthy people, or do you think that it's not necessarily going to affect them in the future?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea. I think rich folks don't like people telling them how to use their money. And if there's someone that's rich that's taking a different path in how they're allocating money, I think it rubs people the wrong way a little bit, especially if they're at that level of richness, right? Then it's like, oh, you only gave 10 million this year? Well, Mackenzie gave 600 million. You got to step up your game, right? Like, I feel like that competitiveness, but I don't know Elon. That's just my speculation and what I'm assuming. But I think at the end of the day, though, I do think that if Elon disagrees with how she's giving out her money, that he shouldn't be vocalizing it, because she's not asking anyone in how they give out their money. She's just giving out her money in a way that she feels that she can make an impact and leave her legacy on this earth. And I think that's amazing.
Well, I mean, I have one more question for you, and you could tell me if you don't want to answer it, but why do you think she's doing it now? Like, what is her backstory to why she could have done it before, but she's choosing after the divorce to give that money now? Do you think it's from the heart, like a scheme, or what's your opinion on that?
So from what I know, soon after the divorce happened, she made that commitment, because everybody knew that depending on how their settlement was going to be between her and Jeff Bezos, that she was going to get a lot of money. So she made that commitment early on, knowing when she was going through the divorce that, hey, I'm planning on giving away a lot of my money. And she was explicit on that. I think why is she more forthcoming on it during and after the divorce? I think, because maybe when she was with Jeff, I know they give money out, but not to the extent that she's giving out. You know how people say, in a marriage, your money, my money, whatever, if you don't have a prenup. But I'm sure she probably was not going to be giving out money like that the way she is right now if she was still married to Jeff. But the fact that that money is hers, she can do whatever she wants. I mean, $34 billion is a lot of money.
Oh, yes.
So I just think that, I don't know. I don't know Mackenzie, Scott, so I think maybe it's the way that she's finding peace around all the stuff that she's gone through. And she realizes that $34 billion is a lot of money. And she's I think it gives her excitement and joy and happiness to know that she can make a dent in some of the things that's happening on this world. And she's been very consistent. Ever since the divorce happened, every year she gives out money. And she's going to continue to give the money out. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what's caused, like what's the driver around it. But I do feel like if you have that much money and that's your mission, I think it's definitely satisfying to her to see that like that's where the money is going. But I don't know her, so that's just my opinion.
Okay, perfect. I would have to ask you, is there anything you would want to tell somebody who's the rich or the wealthy that can kind of not push them over to actually donate or be that philanthropist that they might be thinking about but be on the edge of doing?
It's very important. You don't have to be rich to give. We all have a purpose in this life in terms of how we engage with one another and how we see the challenges that comes along with being on this earth that we live in. We all have a responsibility to contribute positively in the environment and the community that we're in. I would say regardless if you have 50 cents in your bank account to $35 billion like Mackenzie Scott, it is our responsibility to give back. So if you have more than others, it's really important to be able to figure out, are there ways for you to partake the wealth that you have or the resources that you have in a way that it's impacting others positively. And the satisfaction around making those impact and the sacrifice of stepping out and saying, hey, I'm willing to give because I know that this cause or that cause is important to help contribute in solving that problem or providing. I think it's like incredible. So I would encourage anyone that have wealth or no wealth to figure out what does it mean for them to be able to contribute in the community that they're in the society that we all are in, positively in order to leave an impact. And it's a sacrifice. If you're willing to make that sacrifice, I think the reward is long lasting because the ripple effect of it benefits others. So I would encourage everybody, not just rich folks, to jump on board and make a sacrificial impact that others benefit from it than just them. So Mackenzie Scott, I don't know who you are as a person. I don't know what's driving you, but all I would say is based on what I've read about and the impact that I've seen that you've done, I commend you for being able to give out your wealth at the extent that you are doing it. And other rich folks that are seeing what she's doing, focus on the positive aspect, which is those who are the recipient of that money and the impact that money is making. And hopefully it influences you to want to do something similar, to leave an impact now and leave a long-lasting positive impact in the world that we live in.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you for joining us on our conversation on philanthropy giving. Tune in next time for more conversation on community success and grant making. Follow, subscribe, and see you next time.